From an egg, a tadpole hatches, which in turn becomes a frog. The egg of a newt follows the same pattern. Like the newt and the frog, the toad also has the same remarkable change in its life, familiar to us all since childhood. But that's not the whole story. A frog he would a-wooing go, so goes the rhyme. But how do our British amphibians really go a-wooing? Is this ball of croaking toads a prelude to mating? Will this sparring match between two newts end in breeding? These seemingly straightforward questions led two scientists to investigate the details of the amphibians' courtship, and it turned out to be an intriguing detective story. The detectives, Nick Davis and Tim Halliday, who's rowing, chose to work at this particular pond because frogs, toads and newts all come here to breed. They're searching for the first arrivals. And one spring morning, after days of watching and waiting, they were greeted by a chorus of croaks. The frogs had returned to breed. It's a rare sound these days. This pond is the frogs' only breeding site for miles around. Their arrival is unpredictable and dependent on the smallest rise in temperature. Tim and Nick know they may only have one day for their observations because the frogs' mating season is brief and fraught with danger. They're very tasty. The males appear at the pond first. Only they croak. Their daytime chorus attracts other frogs, both male and female, to this pond. As night falls, scores of frogs are assembling, seeking mates. There are almost equal numbers of males and females. Tim and Nick count 150 males and 130 females. Some have already paired. A solitary great crested newt makes its way down to the pond, also under cover of darkness. Within a few hours, all is still again. The next morning, the scientists return to the pond. There's no croaking, and the net reveals nothing. The frogs have disappeared. Away from the sweep of the net, the frogs have congregated at a hidden spawning ground. Overnight, all the females have been claimed, held firmly by a male in a tight embrace called amplexus. Once clasped, he won't willingly give up his mate. Wherever she goes, he must go too. His swollen thumbs with horny pads grip her slippery body. He's waiting to fertilize her eggs. In a 5-second quiver, over 3,000 eggs are laid and externally fertilized. Once one pair has spawned, it seems to trigger the others to lay, and soon the pond is full of eggs. Having spawned, the couples separate and leave under cover of night. The spawn remains, and only an emaciated female lingers, wounded by her mate's embrace. Then she too leaves. After 3 days of hectic courtship, there's not a frog in sight. A few days later, when Tim visits the pond, he hears a new kind of croak. The toads have now arrived, and their courtship is very different. It's leisurely because they're poisonous and have very little fear of being eaten. And unlike the frogs, the toad's croaking is not an assembly call. The male toads arrive first and wait, legs outstretched, for a female. Others search more actively. They investigate every moving toad to discover whether it's a female. Females are always silent, so if he jumps on another male and hears a croak, he knows he's got it wrong. The male toads are so keen to find a mate that they leap at any moving body, from a net handle to a reed stem. What's more, they'll defend it with determination. Though the numbers of females increases greatly during these 10 days in spring, they're vastly outnumbered by the males. Only mature females come to the pond to breed. With several thousand males, every female is in great demand. At the height of the mating season, it's difficult for the two scientists to see or understand what's really happening. Can this ball of croaking toads really be fighting over one female? Sure enough, there's a suffocating female at the core. Though much larger than the male, she has no choice of mate. It appears chaotic. Is there no order? Why all the croaking? Who will finally pair with a female? Mating is a dangerous business. Sometimes in the frenzy, a female drowns. To sort out all the confusion, the two scientists carry out further detective work after dark, when even more toads arrive at the breeding site. They come from all directions, some having travelled several miles. Tim and Nick collect single males and single females and keep them separately from those arriving in Amplexus. This female has 2 males on her back. Most males arrive before the females and stay for the whole breeding period, perhaps 10 days. But the females stay for only 2 or 3 days. On this night, they collected 10 silent single females and 20 pairs already in Amplexus. But the largest collection was 3 buckets containing over 100 single croaking males. With 4 to 5 males for every female, it's not surprising there's so much fighting. But who's going to win a female, perhaps the biggest? To answer this question, Tim and Nick decided to follow individual male toads. First, they measure them.
Right, he's 52.
This male is small, only 52 millimeters, compared with large ones of up to 75 millimeters. The pair is temporarily separated.
You've got a small bulge. Right. Okay. 251.
Then a small numbered waistband is slipped onto the male. It will be clearly visible in the pond by day and will fall off within a week.
Come on you go. That's it. Oh, this fits really nicely.
251 is a small male. Tomorrow morning, will he be with his gravid female with whom he's reunited?
That's it. Well done.
Got her.
Good.
Right, shall we let them go down at the pond?
Yeah.
Over several nights, nearly 300 banded toads are released into the pond.
That's a good night's work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go on, babies.
A single male immediately investigates. 251 croaks in defiance. Only the toad who's attacked croaks. But who will have the female by dawn? Nick scans the pond for banded individuals. 236. A large male still has his female. However, 251, the small male, is alone now, searching for another female. It became clear to the two scientists that small males usually lose the fight for a female. So they arranged some meetings to see what actually happens during a fight.
Okay, I've got a large female with a small male on that. And a big male to attack them.
Let's see if we can knock that one off.
Will the large male displace the small one?
There it goes. Go on, boy.
Within a few minutes, the large male is displacing the small one.
He's just about gone. He's only hanging on the back leg now. Still calling.
So the larger toad has won.
Right, I think we'll take these out now. And put the others in. Now we've got a big defending male and a small attacker.
The situation is now reversed. Nick and Tim wait to see whether the small male will attack.
That's great. That's nice. Oh, yes. Go on, boy. Go on. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
That was really nice.
They notice that only the defending toad calls. Why doesn't the small male press home his attack? Could the defender's croak be significant? When touched, large male toads give a deep croak. Small ones a higher pitched note. Both high and low croaks are recorded. The next question: could an attacking male recognize the size of the defending male just by the depth of its croak? To test this idea, a small defending male was silenced by gently passing an elastic band through his mouth. This doesn't harm the toad, it simply means that he will no longer be able to make his own high croak. Instead, a recording of a deep croak will be played to deceive the attacking male.
Right, here's the large attacker. Right, let's see what happens.
Good.
Just switch on the tape.
Right, you ready?
Yep.
A deep croak is played, deeper than the attacker's own call. The attacker retreats, deceived by the deep croak, and leaves the smaller male in possession. To confirm this, they change the call. This new one will be high-pitched. The lone toad's behavior changes immediately. Now he attacks. Tim and Nick have confirmed that a male toad can recognize the size of another toad just by its croak. So whether above or below water, the croaks are the key to the toad's courtship. They not only distinguish males from females, but also advertise the size of the male. This signaling system helps to settle fights quickly. Peace at last in the pond, though most males remain empty-handed. A string of fertilized spawn, a double thread of eggs enveloped in jelly, the prize for which all the males have been fighting. A large male is in possession, and his sperm fertilizes the batch of eggs as the female lays them. The eggs emerge tangled like a ball of wool. Later they unravel as the couple weave their way through the reeds. Some 3,000 eggs may be laid in small batches every half hour. Even with these large numbers, only a few will survive to adulthood and return to this pond to breed. Courtship and egg-laying over, the shrunken female is no longer attractive to the male. She's escaped his grip and emerges onto land. And for the scientists, observations on the toads are complete, over for another year. While the toads were courting, the frog spawn has begun to develop, protected from predators by its surrounding jelly. It's a hostile world into which the tadpoles hatch about a fortnight later. At first, they cling to the jelly with an adhesive organ. They don't eat the jelly, but absorb the rest of their yolk sac. As their mouth develops, they move onto algae to feed. After 3 days, their external gills disappear and internal ones develop. Swimming freely now, they attract predators like this male smooth newt, which is also here to breed. Feeding's a priority. The sooner they leave the pond, the better. Tadpoles make a tasty meal. As they grow, tadpoles themselves become carnivorous and will even eat the dead remains of an adult frog. A freak of nature, white frog spawn. It's a rarity. Though some of the eggs will hatch into tadpoles, they seldom survive into adulthood. Not true albinos because their eyes are black, but they do lack protective pigments and are very conspicuous, easy prey. Even the normally coloured tadpoles aren't safe from predation. Many go to nourish newts or dragonfly larvae. The survivors in the pond now number thousands rather than millions. The string of toad spawn develops in the same way as the frogs, but the eggs are smaller. The tadpoles are also much darker, almost black, and at this time less well developed. But the most significant difference is that they're distasteful, unpalatable even to this crested newt. Now there are tadpoles at all stages of development in the pond. The hind legs of frogs appear first, after about 7 weeks from hatching, and then their forelegs. Soon they'll absorb their tails and emerge as adults. Of the 3 amphibians, it's the secretive courtship of the newt that has been the most difficult to unravel. But for Tim, it's led to the most exciting discoveries. His study began 5 years ago in the convenient seclusion of an aquarium set up in his home at Oxford. Tim's particular interest is the courtship of the smooth newt, whose season can last for several months. In spring, the male smooth newt develops a crest from head to tail and becomes much brighter, spotted and glossy. He swims down and recognizes the female by her duller colour and her scent.
I think we've got something here. The male's going up to the female.
She moves forward, and the male on the left begins to display in front of her. That whip, followed by a wave, as Tim calls them, are conspicuous parts of courtship. The male is sending a potent scent to the female. She smells it and feels the vibrations of his tail and responds. He intersperses it with a gentler movement, a fan. His scent wafts over her. He continues until he seems certain of her response. He turns and creeps away, waving his tail invitingly. Each subtle movement is recorded. After hours of watching, Tim pieces together this delicate courtship ritual. Unlike the frogs and toads, the newt female can accept or reject her mate. Her touch seems to trigger the male to deposit his sac of sperm. He lifts his tail. There's the white bag. As she moves forward over the bag, it rises, and with luck, her rear opening, her cloaca, will pick it up. Later, the sperm will fertilize the eggs. All these whips, waves, and fans are a necessary prelude for the transfer of the sperm. The male's mating success depends on him being attractive to the female, not on his fighting ability, as in frogs and toads. And so the dance goes on. Again he raises tail and cloaca, and the sac appears. As a female approaches, it swells and rises. He pauses and stops her, precisely when her cloaca will be above it, and a second one sticks on. What stimulates the male to drop the sac? Tim devises a simple way of controlling the female's response. With great care, he puts her into what he calls a straitjacket. It's quite harmless, and returns her to the expectant male. The male responds and begins his display at once. To Tim, it's clear that the female has to follow closely if the male is to continue his dance. If she stops, he stops. Can the depositing of the sperm sac be inhibited? Tim doesn't move the female forward to touch the male's tail. Sure enough, the male doesn't deposit. The male begins whipping again. Tim lets the female follow. This time, he lets her nose gently touch the male's tail. And a bag of sperm, a simple but convincing experiment. The female moves forward, the cloaca accepts the sac, the male stops the right distance ahead, the sperm are slowly absorbed. Once mated, Tim leaves several females together to lay their eggs. Each female sniffs around until she finds a leaf to her liking. Then she takes it and folds it around her swollen cloaca. With a gluey secretion, she sticks the leaf together to make a protective compartment. Into this, she lays a single, already fertilized egg. Over several days, she may lay 100 hidden eggs, many fewer than the frogs and toads. By late spring, the Daphnia have hatched, and they're prey for the carnivorous newt tadpole. Quite unlike the other tadpoles, they have balancing organs. Their front legs develop first, and their tails will never be reabsorbed. So, life in the pond is nearing its end for the developing newts, frogs and toads. And for the scientists, another year's research is over. By August, the pond is barely recognizable and appears to be empty of amphibians. Until one day, the lily pads are a polka dot of movement. The toad tadpoles have metamorphosed. They've lost their tails and developed lungs, and so are ready for life on land. Now it's a mass migration. Thousands of toadlets and an occasional frog jump from water to terra firma. Later, it'll be the turn of the newts. Well camouflaged, they quickly disperse. The odds are against them, but the breeding behaviour of frogs, toads and newts produces so many young that a few at least will survive. Most of those will return to this particular pond where they were hatched to repeat their parents' amorous cavorting. How do they find their way? Well, that's a part of the detective story that remains to be solved another year. This fly has less than a minute to live. For most small creatures, the surface of water is a fatal trap, but a few have mastered its peculiar problems. For them, this fragile interface is home. Look closer at the familiar surface of our ponds and rivers. On this gossamer-thin film, you will find a whole new world, miniature and unsuspected. Communities of tiny hunters, grazers and scavengers, walking not on land, but on water. The water measurer, a half-inch long hunter of the weedy water margins. Pond skaters. In this, the largest of our 8 or so British species, the male rides on the female's back, locked in an embrace which may last for weeks, hence its country name, the double insect. And walking inverted below the surface, a water boatman, shadow boxing with its own reflection. Split between two worlds, the whirligig beetle sending patterned wavelets across the surface film. But what forms this thin film? Water molecules at the surface are subject to unequal forces. They're attracted more strongly to their fellows beside and below than they are to the air above. So the surface tries to contract, and this surface tension forms an elastic layer, strong enough to bear the weight of a small insect without breaking. Look at these pond skaters. Their bodies are held clear of the water, only their feet touch the surface. And the feet are covered with tiny water-repellent hairs. So they just dent the surface film rather than breaking it. The body, too, has a waxy water-repellent covering, so that if it does touch the surface, the pond skater isn't trapped. This caddisfly is even lighter, but it isn't waterproof. It's broken the surface film, and now it's spread-eagled by the pull of the surface tension, held down by the same force that keeps the pond skater up. The waves generated by its struggle alert a pond skater. They have vibration detectors in their feet, and the order in which these are stimulated tells them which direction the ripples are coming from. Once at close quarters, they can use their eyes as well. Those strange shadows are caused by light being deflected from its path as it passes through the waves and dimples on the water surface. To begin with, the prey is approached with caution. It could be dangerous. But once it's identified as harmless, it's seized with the front legs and carried off. It's quite common for feeding pond skaters to anchor themselves by a foot to a convenient twig or stone. The pond skaters are hunters and scavengers of open water. Some even live on streams and rivers. The still margins of ponds are home for one of the surface grazers, tiny primitive insects called springtails. They may look like a herd of elephants, but they're little bigger than a pinhead. Most of the time, their tail is folded round and hooked under the body. But if it's released, it slaps down and hurls the springtail into the air, hence the name. They come in assorted shapes and colours. Like the pond skaters, their bodies are water repellent, and so too are all but the ends of their legs. Their feet, though, are designed to pierce the surface film, so they can get a grip on the water without sinking too deep. They feed on the thin layer of detritus and microorganisms at the water surface. Flowers and unfurling leaves are familiar signs of spring at the water's edge. But close to the surface, there are stranger unfoldings. A dragonfly nymph has crawled up out of the water and shed its skin for the last time. Now the adult waits for its wings to harden before starting its new life above the water. Damselflies of many kinds and colours take to the air in search of a mate, though here they're courting within a wing beat of the water surface. But these creatures of the air have to return to water to deposit their eggs. When mating is finished, they fly off in tandem to lay. There are several ways of doing this. Some dragonflies scatter their eggs as they fly over the water or dip them loose through the surface to sink to the bottom. This damselfly is laying with greater precision. Although she looks delicate, she is strong enough to thrust her tail through the surface film to place her eggs on a reed stem just below. Others lay deeper and in a remarkable way. The pond skater's courtship has a more intimate connection with the surface. Indeed, some species use it as a sounding board to transmit their messages of love. The males vibrate the water surface to attract females. This species is a little less subtle. Only after the male has mounted is the surface used as a means of communication. The female's vigorous vibrations show the male that she is receptive, and he in turn will dip his middle legs into the water in front of her and shake the surface. Their tails touch, and sperm is passed from male to female. The male will remain on the female after mating. By doing so, he perhaps ensures that no other male will mate with her before the eggs are laid. Sometimes eggs are deposited in the splash zone on the rocks, projecting from the water. But if the level were to fall, they would be left high and dry, and more often they're laid beneath the surface. To get there, the female has to break through the surface film, and it's quite a struggle. Her waxy body repels the water, and the surface tension is continually pulling her back up. It's hard for us to appreciate the strength of surface tension, but for an insect the size of a pond skater, it's a very real force. When finally she does break through, a silvery film of air clings to her body. This allows her to breathe while she's underwater, but it also makes her very buoyant, so she has to hold tight to the rocks while seeking a suitable spot to lay. Each female lays about 40 eggs in batches of 5 to 20 at a time, neatly cemented onto the rocks. When she's finished laying, she lets go and floats back up to the surface, buoyed up by the air trapped around her body. After about 20 days, depending on temperature, the eggs begin to hatch. The newly hatched pond skaters break through to the surface. At this stage, they're a leggy, short-tailed version of the adult. They will molt 5 more times while growing to full size. Until then, they keep out of the adult's way. They run the risk of being eaten if they don't. Like the adults, they're air breathers. That's no problem if you live above the surface. Underwater, it's different. Some aquatic insects have developed gills to extract oxygen dissolved in the water, but others, such as these thread-like mosquito larvae, are still dependent on the air above. To reach it, they have to break the surface film, no easy task for so small a creature. They solve the problem by having microscopic oily flaps at the tip of their breathing tube. These are water repellent, so when they touch the surface, they break through, and the surface tension pulls them out like the petals of a flower. So firmly does this anchor them to the surface that they have to give a convulsive jerk to break free. Once they're below the surface, the flaps close over the end of the breathing tube to prevent water from entering. The water beetle larva is another creature that's dependent on air from above the water. It's much bigger and stronger than the mosquito larva, But even so, it uses a similar technique to help it break the surface film. Its tail has a fringe of water-repellent hairs. Here it is again seen from above. Air is taken in through the two holes at the tip of the tail. The water boatman, too, comes to the surface to replenish its air supply, a gleaming envelope of gas trapped in minute hair-covered grooves on its body. And it, too, has a water-repellent hairy fringe to its tail. By such subtle beauties of structure, these creatures harness the strength of surface tension and turn it to their advantage. To us, the threat of a summer shower is a mere passing irritant, but to these minute creatures, the effects can be catastrophic. The once hospitable water surface suffers a dramatic change of nature. At the first sign of rain, the pond skaters make for the shore. They anchor themselves to a rock to ride out the storm or leave the water altogether, for the open water is now a place of unbelievable fury. The pond skaters have survived the rain, and they soon clear the surface of casualties like the unfortunate lacewing fly. Much of their food comes to them in this way. Both dead and living insects are washed in off the bank. They don't chew their prey, but inject saliva and suck out its juices through their piercing mouthparts. Here the male probes for a weak spot in the lacewing's cuticle. Feeding pond skaters often raise their victim up from the surface. This prevents the struggling prey from creating waves that would attract others to share the meal. For the pond skater is not the only creature sensitive to the ripples of a struggling insect. The surface film is a sounding board for others too. The swamp spider, Britain's largest spider. Instead of a web, it uses the water surface as a snare. It lives in small pools in fen and heathland, often lurking at the water's edge, but with at least one of its 8 feet on the water to pick up vibrations. Insects are the bulk of its prey, but a fully grown swamp spider will take small fish. Like the pond skaters, its feet are water repellent, so it too can walk on the surface. Even so, these water skating spiders may spin a silken lifeline to link them to the shore. The use of surface waves reaches its greatest sophistication in the whirligig beetles. Not only do they detect the ripples made by struggling prey, but they use the wavelets created by their own movements as a kind of aquatic echolocation. They pick up the returning waves reflected from objects in their path, and so avoid bumping into them. But it must be tricky to decide which wave is yours in a swarm like this, and they do make mistakes. The rippling surface conceals yet further dangers, for vibrations can be picked up underwater too. A struggling hoverfly attracts a water boatman. It detects the ripples at a distance with sensors in its feet and tail. Water boatmen are robust predators. Small creatures they simply drag under, but with a larger prey like this they climb on top and swamp it. Then they stab it and inject a powerful poison. They can even give a man quite a painful bite. Although they're fully at home underwater, they're strong flyers too. If they exhaust the food supply in one body of water, they can break out through the surface and move to another. Few ponds or cattle troughs are without their population of water boatmen. They owe their ability to colonize new places to the power of flight. As the waters cool, the life at the surface prepares for winter. Pond skaters leave the water to hibernate in nooks and crevices ashore. Other creatures will pass the cold months in the depths below, perhaps overwintering as eggs or larvae. Life and colour drain away. Soon this gossamer habitat will be deserted. As winter comes, thin fingers of ice seal the water surface. The surface becomes hard, unyielding, inhospitable. Our water walkers await the year's turning. Others will walk the water now.